This is Sean with Voices of Racing, and we're talking with a race legend that's also involved in the race chasers. Mike McCauley. Actually knew your boys in college. I went through fraternity with them, and we hadn't been able to hang out since then. But now we're going to save some of your stories. How you doing, Mike?
Fine, Sean. Thank you.
And where are you currently located?
We live in Yorktown, Indiana, just next to Muncie.
All right. Now you had a history in racing, but as far as a professional career, what did you do for a profession?
I worked at Ball State in the academic advising office for 19 years, and then for the last 22 years, I was in the Office of Academic Systems.
Okay. And how we got connected, you've been following a little bit of what I've been doing last year with some of the legends' life stories that we were capturing. And we were at the event in the Dallara IndyCar factory when Vintage Indy was there, and Mike Lashmitt and Allenser Jr. Were also there to speak. We did a project for the Unser family. It was close to 50 people, about 1,000 minutes, and 50 or 46 different interviews of all their memories of the Unsers, including Mario and Michael and everybody else. I know you got to see some of those. Did you? What'd you think of that project? Just as a side note.
Oh, it was wonderful. I've gone through that a couple of times since, just to refresh my aging memory.
All right, well, we're going to take it back in the day, and this first shot is in 1972 in Trenton, New Jersey, qualifying day, and who was your driver?
Jim Hurtubise, Herc, we called him.
And you were on your knees in front of the car. Just kind of give a little bit of backstory on how you got connected with the team, and just tell a little bit of backstory about Jim himself.
Well, first of all, Jim Hurtubise is known to everybody who's ever seen an Indy 500, I think. He was almost the first driver to go 150 miles an hour back, I think it was in 1961, if I'm not mistaken. It was the year before Parnelli did it, so I think it was 61. In 1972, I was a volunteer crewman for MVS Racing, owned by Stan Meless, Bob Voigt, and Dick Summers. And we spent a lot of hours behind the scenes preparing the race cars. And our motto was, after having not slept for a couple of days, we would look at one another and say, "Ain't this big time automobile racing fun?" So I captioned this picture with that. This is before qualifying. So this is about 10 o'clock, 10:30 in the morning. And the spring race, that would have been April of 1972. And we had been working at the racetrack, probably since 4 or 5 o'clock, maybe 6 o'clock in the morning. You can tell by the dark shades of my trousers that we had been doing a little bit of work on the ground.
So who else were the guys on your crew that day?
That day we had Dick Cecil was our chief mechanic. Mark Bridges, who later was the technical director for the IRL, and he was also chief mechanic for a number of teams at the Speedway. Let's see. I think that was pretty much our crew that day.
Okay.
Oh no, Dick Northam. Dick Northam was the other. Cecil Northam, Mark Bridges, and I think were the crew people that day at Milwaukee. Oh, I mean
All right, so just kind of if you could give me and just the audience a little bit of background of just your development going into the sport. Who kind of helped enable that for you? Was it family, or was it where you were working, and what was kind of some of the first things that you really did being involved in the sport?
Well, my brother and I bought a go-kart when, I don't know, I was probably a freshman or sophomore in high school back in the mid-50s. And we raced it around central Indiana. So I always had a love for racing. 1955, my neighbor took me to my first Indy 500. And since that time, until I stopped going to the 500, I saw that race from different locations 59 times. I worked as a volunteer crewman for MVS for a few years. One year I was a spotter for one of the broadcasters, Darrell Weibel, on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Network. So I got to see the 500 from the stands, from the pits, and from a broadcast perch.
That's pretty great. All right, so we're going to change it up here and bring up a famous actress that happens to be with your driver, I believe, and it's Ginger Rogers. She used to perform with Fred Astaire. And just describe the gentleman who's actually over the shoulder of your driver. You said that was the just explain who that is in the background.
Well, I believe that was one of the car owner's brother-in-law. I think I was Dick Summers' brother-in-law, but I'm not absolutely certain of that. What I remember about this day was that Dick Summers, our car owner, his favorite Hollywood star was Ginger Rogers. And Herc somehow got word that she was in the garage area and went and got her and brought her to the garage to meet Dick Summers. And while he did that, Dick and a couple guys from the crew went off for lunch. Herc brings Ginger Rogers back to the garage, and Dick Summers never got to meet her. He was too busy eating lunch, and we didn't send anybody to go get him. But I do remember someone took a picture of me with Ginger she was sitting in the race car, and but that was quite a day. She may have been the only Hollywood star I ever met, other than the ones that used to hang around the racetrack.
All right, so here's a shot of someone famous that everybody knows that's ever watched or heard the beginning of the Indy 500, Jim Nabors, and you're behind Jim Nabors, right off the wing with the white hat, holding basically onto the wing itself. What was this like for you, and how many times were you actually able to be on grid with a car, let alone behind Jim Nabors?
Well, this was Jim's first year to sing Back Home Again in Indiana. And I think that's why this picture is so significant. Jim used to frequent our garage and enjoy a Miller High Life with us periodically, because Miller High Life was our sponsor. And back on the wing with me in the center there is Jim. I don't recall his last name. He was from Lima, Ohio. And to his right was Fuzzy Moore. And Fuzzy was from San Francisco, California. And over on the right, sitting on the pit wall with the red trousers is our chief, and the sunglasses is our chief mechanic, Dick Cecil. I think Leroy Newmeyer is there somewhere, and Dick Northam. They were sitting down because they were going to be up on their feet most of the day.
So again, what year was this? This is 72?
This is 72. The car that we had that year was the car previously driven by Donnie Allison when he drove for A.J. Foyt. And Donnie was Rookie of the Year in this car a year or two before we acquired the car.
So what was the average lap time for the car at this point?
I think we qualified in the upper 180s, 187, 188, 189. I know because one of my jobs was to clock the car through the corners so we could set the wings and the airfoil properly. We were running between 208 and 212 miles an hour back in 1972, going down the straightaways. Well, we couldn't get through the corners nearly as fast as they are now because we didn't have the ground effects. All we had were the airfoils on the front nose of the car and the giant wing on the back. Incidentally, that wing is a copy of the Dan Gurney wing.
All right, so how did you end up doing this day on the track?
Well, as we were coming down we were running immediately behind Joe Leonard and right ahead of Sam Sessions. And at the end of the race, they finished third and fourth. Unfortunately, Herc ran out of fuel at the south end of the racetrack. And in an effort to get the car back to the pits to get it refueled and back on the racetrack, he had some people push him through the infield and back out on the pit line, which we did not know. All we knew was, here comes Herc. We refueled the car, sent him back out, ran the rest of the race. We finished somewhere around 13th, 14th, but were disqualified. And we were awarded, I think it was 23rd place. That would have been a day when we would have finished easily in the top 10. But judgment error there, running out of fuel. Of course, one of my jobs on the crew was to calculate the fuel mileage. So I guess I would have to take some of the blame, although I did want to bring him in the lap before he ran out of fuel. We thought, or the chief thought, he could go another lap or two.
Okay. All right. So here's a shot from, I think you said it was 1971, and it was a midget race in Cortland, Ohio. And the four guys on the top are the same four guys 30 years later when you met at Reggie's. Is Reggie's here in Indianapolis? And just kind of give me a backstory on the guys and what that first day was like when that first shot on the top was taken.
Well, I think if this indeed is Cortland, Ohio, and I'm not absolutely certain of that, but I believe that's right. We had run the midget in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee on a Friday, Southern Illinois on Saturday, and then Cortland, Ohio, which is 7 miles from Sharon, Pennsylvania, on Sunday. We traveled over 1,600 miles to do those 3 races that weekend. On the left is Nelson Stewart, who's Tony's father. On Nelson's left is Gary Irvin, who was the driver of our midget. Next to Gary is Bill DeVos. He was an engineer at that time with Clark Equipment Company in Michigan. And then I'm on the far right. 30 years later, we met for lunch at Reggie's, which was near where Nelson was working at the time. I think it was up near Guyan Road somewhere in 79th Street, something like that, in Indianapolis. But we still get together. Uh, I think Bill is now 85, Nelson's 84, I'm 81, soon to be 82, and then Gary, I think, is 78 and will be 79 in November the 3rd.
I think it'd be neat to hear their documentaries as well, kind of tell their angles of this day and also be able to work together as a crew. Here's another shot that you said was the oldest crew on record to run on a track to date in the world. Is that what you said? Or what's the backstory here of this shot and you guys here? When was this? You said 2018 maybe, or?
No, this was July 25th, 2009.
2009, okay.
At the Rushville Fairgrounds, and Nelson Stewart was driving the TQ there, pictured, and we claimed that this was the oldest driver-crew combination in the history of American automobile racing. I'm on the left, Nelson in the driver's uniform, Nelson's neighbor, Kenny Clanton, and then on the far right in the hat and the shades is our Hollywood star, Bill DeVos. I think that was an upside down day for Nelson. Bent the front of the car, and he said, load it up, we'll take it back to Indy. And about that time, Jack Hewitt, Brad Marvel, Robbie Rice came down, and with Jack Hewitt's leadership, we rebuilt the front of the car, put the shock absorber on upside down because it was bent, and Nelson went back and got it fixed in time for him to run the semi-feature. So that was quite a day.
So here's another shot of you guys having lunch. Is this the same crew essentially?
Yeah, the same four, but in the middle is Jim Bonham. Jim was an industrial arts teacher in South Bend. And when we raced the midget at the South Bend Speedway, we stayed at Jim's house because if we had a little misfortune and bent something, he had all the tools we needed to repair the car and get it ready to race again. So that's what's that. This I think was taken in Buchanan, Michigan at some brew pub.
Well, it looks like you guys are all happy and reminiscent and having a great time. And here's another situation that you do once a month. And you said this was essentially Robin Miller is in this shot. And this is at one of the Race Chasers luncheons. Is that right?
Yes. This is one of the Race Chasers luncheons featuring Tim Coffeen, who was a crewman for several of the IndyCar teams. Most notable, the Newman Haas teams, Ben Andretti, Nigel Mansell, and a number of guys have driven for. And his very close friend and confidant, Robin Miller, was our moderator that day, and he got to ask Fino, as we call him, many questions about his racing career. It was one of the best Race Chaser meetings we've ever had, and of course we've lost Robin now, but Tim is still invited, and Tim is doing podcasts now on his racing career. So if anyone is interested, I think you can Google Tim Coffeen podcast and catch some of those. I've listened to a few myself, and they're excellent.
Well, one of our goals with Vintage, as far as all the old racers and everything within the Race Chasers, is being able to help produce documentaries for them that they can share with other race chasers as well with their families and pass it on for generations. So I'm looking forward to this coming Saturday when we're back at the Delara Car Factory, and I'm able to actually get some on-site short story interviews with individuals that will make kind of a compilation per meeting. But I want to get to this next shot. Is this in the Ray Skillman Museum, or where is this?
Yeah, this is Ray Skillman's Automobile Museum down in Greenwood, Indiana. And he invited the Robin Miller Friday lunch bunch, Racers Lunch, to his facility. This has been 2-3 years ago now, maybe, 3 years ago. And in this picture on the left is Merle Bettenhausen with a hat, and then that's Ray in the center. And I think that's Dave Scoggin on the right. And it must have been chilly in there that day because Dave's got his hat on.
Let's let the viewers just take a nice long look at this shot. I know it's a pretty phenomenal facility. Do you happen to have any idea of how many different actual race cars he's got in there in comparison to old vintage classics?
No, I don't, but Merle Bettenhausen would know. Merle worked for Ray for a number of years in his PR division. And Merle actually arranged with Ray for us to go. And it was such a wonderful day to see all the old cars. I don't know how many he has, but it's, when you count the race cars and the muscle cars and the Corvettes and everything, it's got to be 100 to 200 cars in that show there.
That is pretty amazing. So this shot right here is an individual that we've already done his documentary, Mike Lynn. He's been involved for a long time. A lot of people know him, but this can kind of be the outcome of an individual's documentary that they can have a card to be able to hand out to people so people could kind of know their backstory. And in that shot, he's got a 1932 Miller, that number 7. But here's another one that we did just as an example with the Marlboro car from 1986, and the doctor who now owns it outside of Chicago. But if we're going to kind of get back to just you in general, you've been in the sport for a long time. What would be some of I'd say your favorite drivers and just a couple favorite moments of just you being able to be involved? What are some major ones that stand out?
Well, I enjoyed my days with the midgets. Made a lot of good friends in the midgets. And then when I got to Indianapolis with MVS, I don't know, we had a lot of different drivers. Ronnie Bucknam drove for us in the late 60s. Arnie Knepper drove 2 or 3 years. Jim Hurtubise, as I mentioned. Sam Sessions, he might have been one of my favorites. He was very cordial and helpful young man at the time. He drove for us in 73. And in 74, we had Denny Zimmerman, who's also just a superb individual. I enjoy Denny, still keep in touch with Denny quite a bit. Of course, Sammy lost his life in a snowmobile accident several years back, and Jim Hurtubise died many years ago too. Arnie Knepper, I think, succumbed to cancer, and I don't know. I think Ronnie Bucknam, he might still be alive. I know his son Jeff ran at Indy a few years back. But I don't know about Ronnie. I haven't kept in touch with him. But those were, we had great drivers at Indy, and they were all very, very cordial to those of us who were pushing the car around and getting it ready to race. Enjoyed every moment that I spent in IndyCar racing.
Well, Mike, I really appreciate your time today. And if the viewers kind of want to check out that stuff we spoke about earlier for the Unsers, they could go to unserstories.com. I mean, there's a lot of great legends talking about a legendary family. But I look forward to helping save the life stories of the race chasers, drivers, crews, and also the fans. And I look forward to being at the meeting on Saturday And Mike, I just really appreciate the opportunity. And they can also go to VoicesofRacing.com and see other things we've done. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Well, as far as this coming Saturday, we have another one of the greats as our main speaker, and that's John Parsons. Johnny Parsons Jr. will be there. And I think assisting him will be a midget driver, Gary Irvin, who has a number of stories. Gary drove not only midgets, but sprint cars, Silver Crown cars, and drove in a few IndyCar races. But Johnny Parsons, of course, drove many years at Indy, I think 8, 9, 10 years, maybe even more. And then, and he was very good in midgets and extremely good in sprint cars and Silver Crown cars. So I hope if people see this before Saturday the 17th, they'll join us at the Dallara factory. Be looking forward to seeing everyone, and be looking forward to seeing you there too, Sean.
Well, I'm looking forward to the road ahead, Mike. And if you could just stay on the line, I thank you for your time, and I'm going to close this one out.
Okay, thanks, Sean.